And this afternoon I want to begin Cancorlia on behalf of Sinn Féin by extending my condolences at the passing of South Belfast MLA Christopher Stalford, to Christopher's wife Laura, to his 4 children, his families, his friends and his colleagues in the DUP. Our thoughts and prayers are with them as they grieve his loss. Oireachtas and Chachtan Shohatin, Shees Gamor or Frigran Oireachtas, Shaw Modger Lagirkim, the Costas Maralta. Sinnirinne on Nawo Gulor a Yenu, Augusta Poishi, Erlina Bachtanish, Mariala Costashi at Gardu. Children face the sharp edge of the cost of living crisis. We see a report from Bernardo showing that a quarter of families fear that they won't be able to feed their kids as the price of groceries soars. Bernardo's CEO, Suzanne Connolly, stated that families are running out earlier due to increasing costs. She says that the situation is now very serious for low and middle income families. In its scorecard published yesterday, the Children's Rights Alliance awarded the government an E grade to reflect the increasing number of children experiencing homelessness. Extortionate rents that ordinary families can't afford are a key driver, Minister, in this scandal. And the package announced by government doesn't go far enough. It barely scratches the surface. And it's not just me or Sinn Féin telling you this. It's Bernardo's, it's St Vincent de Paul, it's Social Justice Ireland, it's other organisations all saying the same thing. You could have made better choices. You could have acted as Sinn Féin proposed. You could have cut rents and banned increases, but you didn't. You could have cut childcare costs. You didn't do that. You could have expanded and extended the fuel allowance. You didn't do that either. You could have provided a cost of living cash payment to individuals. Again, you refused to do that. A one-off energy credit paid in March or April is better than nothing, but it won't make a dent when people are paying thousands to light and heat their homes. Last month, gas demand rose by 11% as temperatures dropped, Minister. At the weekend, Sinn Féin activists were out engaging with communities, and people were coming to their doors with energy bills so high that they described them as the straw that would finally break their backs. And what is the response to the government to all of this hardship? Well, firstly, we have the Taoiseach telling people that no further help is coming from the government and that they'll have to wait at least 7 months for the budget. You're on your own is the message from the head of government. And then we have Taoiseach piping up Leo Varadkar, who talks about increasing interest rates, an issue that wouldn't help any families but would heap additional financial pressure on workers and households. And then you plan, and your government colleagues plan, to go ahead with a carbon tax increase that will make it even more expensive for families to keep their homes warm. And on Wednesday night, to crown it all off, you roll in here and you vote to ensure that cuckoo funds continue to pay no tax on rental income and CGT, the same very funds that are gobbling up family homes, making home ownership unaffordable and helping driving rents up, up and up, Minister. Now, the government needs to get a reality check. You need to wake up and you need to understand where ordinary people are at. Because you're living in dreamland if you think that people can hang on and wait until next October until you announce next year's budget. Families and children need a far better intervention from government to bring down the cost of living, and they need that right here, right now. That's what the call is for. So I'm asking you, are you going to leave them in the lurch, or are you going to do, as Sinn Féin has asked them, and act to support those families, to support those children who so many organisations are saying are being left behind as a result of your policies?
Thank you, Deputy Doherty. Minister McGrath.
Thank you very much, Deputy Doherty, for raising once again the very real issue of the cost of living pressures that people are facing. The government acknowledges that a lot of people are under real pressure because of the rising cost of living. We all know the reasons why the cost of living is increasing. There are external, international factors. There are also domestic factors, including the really strong rebound in the Irish economy, which I think has exceeded most expectations. On the external front, undoubtedly, the increase in wholesale energy prices, the disruptions in the global supply chain, all are having a real impact on the ground. But of course, people aren't that concerned about the reasons why. They just know it's hurting them It's affecting them, and they want to know what we're doing about it. We do note that the most recent data from the CSO shows a moderation in January in relation to the harmonised index of consumer prices, down from 5.7% to 5%. We can't take too much comfort from that. It's a slight easing, and we don't know yet whether that is going to be part of an improvement in the underlying trend or whether it is a one-off. Time will tell in relation to that. But that is why, Deputy, the Government has acted. That is why we acted in the budget last October, when we had an income tax package of over €500 million in respect of reductions in income tax, the burden of which falls on low-income people, on middle-income people as well. Your own proposal in respect of income tax was to increase it by €800 million in the last budget. This government reduced it by €500 million. That's €1.3 billion of a difference in our income tax proposals in the last budget alone. In addition to that, we had a social welfare package in the last budget of over €500 million, much of which was targeted at the working family payment, at the qualified child payment, for example, and at the living alone allowance. Three payments that are generally accepted as being among the most effective tools that any government has to tackle the poverty issues that are undoubtedly there. And of course, it was also coupled with increases in the core rates. We acknowledge that there is a challenge in relation to fuel prices. That is why we increased the fuel allowance in the budget by €5 immediately on budget night last year. Your proposal was not to increase the fuel allowance at all in the budget last October, and that is a fact, Deputy. And now, of course, we've gone much further. And in recent weeks, we've come forward with a package of over €500 million. Some measures are targeted and some measures are universal. The targeted measures will include the €125 once-off payment to people on the fuel allowance. Almost 400,000 households will get that payment in the next 3 weeks. By mid-March, Minister Humphreys plans to have that payment transferred to the people who need it the most. A number of the measures we brought in the budget last October have yet to kick in. Will also help many families, in particular working families, middle-income families, who also are feeling the pressure. The improvement in the SUSI grant, for example, will come in the autumn. The improvement in the means test, the qualifying threshold for student support scheme. The extension of the universal childcare subsidy in relation to older children will also kick in the autumn of this year. The parents' benefit, the extension by 2 weeks of the parents' benefit will kick in July, and in addition a number of the other social welfare measures such as the improvement in the means test for carers, for example, will also come into effect in June. Deputy, I represent ordinary people. I get elected by ordinary people. This government represents ordinary people. We are listening to them. That is why we have responded in the best way that we can so far with a set of universal measures, but also a set of targeted measures, including those introduced outside of the annual budget. And that has just been done, as you know.
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, Minister, the people I speak to talk to me, if they live in this city, they say that they can't afford €2,000 rents. And they can't understand why you and your government continue to vote against rent freezes. They continue to ask me why they won't support our policy that would put a month's rent back into renters' pockets. The people I talk to talk about the fact that childcare is a second mortgage for many families and that there is a way to cut the cost of childcare. It falls in deaf ears. The people I talk to say that the social welfare package that you introduced in last year's budget doesn't even keep it up in line with inflation. What people want is real action right here, right now. And there's a suite of proposals that we put forward. Suite of proposals that could help people in terms of cost of living, direct cash payments. You refuse to do it. Ban rent increases and put money back into renters' pocket. You refuse to do it. Cut childcare costs. You refuse to do it. But yet, when it comes to last week's vote, no tax for vulture funds that are making millions of euro on charging the highest rents in the state. That is the ordinary people that you're on the side of, Minister. Because talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. But when it comes to action, you're failing to deliver for these families. And again, don't take Sinn Féin's view for it. Bernardo, St Vincent de Paul, Social Justice Ireland, one-parent family, they're all saying the same thing. So you need to understand where people are at.
Thank you very much. Minister.
Deputy, we do understand where people are at. And you're right, talk is cheap. You talk about fuel poverty. You introduced an alternative budget last October. You didn't increase the fuel allowance by 1 cent. Now, that is the truth, Deputy. You did that. Last year, October, you published your budget proposals, not a single cent of an increase in the fuel allowance. This government increased it by €5 on budget night in an unprecedented measure because we recognise the genuine difficulties that people are facing. And you talk about the carbon tax. You're being duplicitous in relation to the carbon tax, highly disingenuous. You give people the impression Sinn Féin is against the carbon tax. The only thing you're against in relation to the carbon tax is the next increase, whenever that is going to be, because you never propose to unwind the carbon tax or abolish the carbon tax. So tell people the truth. You are in favour of the carbon tax. You're only ever against the next increase, and that is typical of the cynical politics that you are pursuing in relation to prices of families. And perhaps you might tell the people where the €412 million that is ring-fenced this year for fuel poverty measures, for retrofitting, for agri-environmental schemes from carbon tax receipts will come from if it's not there.
Thank you very much, Minister. We go now to the co-leader of the Social Democrats, Deputy Roisin Shortall, please.